You're listening to SaskScapes, a podcast featuring the stories of arts, culture, and heritage in Saskatchewan. I'm Kevin Power. My fourth podcast from Rockglen is a chance for me to introduce to you the hosts you heard me talk about so much. Jan Johnston and painter-musician Neil Jones opened their home and hearts to me. Neil makes one heck of a good pasta sauce, which we had for supper, and then he topped himself by making an equally amazing omelet for breakfast. And then there was last night's rocking good time at the house party jam session. Their friend, Ken Christopher, also a Saskatchewan painter and musician, and one of Jan and Neil's other guests, joined us. And yes, that is Brenda Feuerstein you hear briefly. You heard my chat with Brenda in a previous podcast. These are four very good friends who are doing inspiring and creative work in Saskatchewan.
So, when Lynn Holmes said you should call this couple named Jan and Neil Johnston in Rockglen, and she told me that you did these house parties, I was there already. I was halfway to coming to your neighborhood just because I grew up with house parties and kitchen parties, and I think it's an incredible thing. So I called Jan, and instantly I thought, I'm going to have a good time here. And you felt so thrilled and touched that somebody would be interested in coming to Rockglen and telling the story of how you got here. So, Neil, how did you get here?
I suppose I started painting down here years ago, and then we just kind of worked our way into this whole south area, looking for a place to live, or a place to have a cottage at least.
Right.
And then we found this place, so we finally made a decision just to move down here full time.
I should say I'm surrounded by all of your work. You're extremely prolific, and your artistry is influenced by where you grew up.
Right.
Which was?
Near the Pasco Reserve by Fort Capel.
Right.
And that was a big influence when I was a child, and it's finally come back to me after stumbling around for years doing other stuff.
Right. And there are so many native faces Aboriginal faces in your work. Are they all memories of people that you grew up around?
Some of them. Mm-hmm. And then the rest are archival photos, which I've just used my own impression on.
Right. And when was it that you first started painting? What was the earliest memory that you have of thinking that you would like to paint, or being inspired by somebody's painting and thinking that you would like to?
When I was a kid, because my mom was from more of a cultured background from Wales.
All right.
She was a classically trained singer, so we always had music and art as part of our life. So.
Right. Had you done anything other than what we would term creative as far as visual arts and being a musician? Did you try your hand at things that
I'm a journeyman carpenter.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
But then again, there's an opportunity to
create stuff.
Yeah, right. So it's in you.
Yeah.
Right. And at what decision did you decide? At what point did you decide you'd like to make your living full time from your art?
I think it was just a gradual work into it, because for many years I'd always painted or played music as an entertaining myself.
Right.
And then eventually it worked into, I thought I'd start trying to see if I could make a living at it.
Is it hard?
It's very hard. Very,
How
very
so?
hard.
Getting your work seen?
Yeah. I think the marketing side is where the artist always falls down.
Right.
Because you just put all your energy into the creation, and then the rest is whatever.
Right. So how do you reconcile that when you're wondering? You ever get to a point where you think, "Why am I doing all this? It's not getting out there."
I think every day I go through.
Do you? Yeah. Right. Yet for some reason you do.
Keep going, yeah.
Because
it's such a. I think it's the joy of your spirit. Is what I find anyway.
You'd be lost without it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we've got to get this work out there. So Rockglen has very limited space in which to show artwork.
Yeah. Like this is the only gallery in
Right.
town. There's Darcy's has started up one, but I don't know where. I'd look at it just as a hub to work from.
Yeah. Well, I should say you've essentially created your living room into a concert hall and a gallery.
Yeah.
Is what's happened here. When did you meet Jan and how?
She was my neighbor in Regina.
Oh,
That was
11.
years ago. Yeah.
all right. And Jan, did you have an artistic background as well?
Absolutely not. I'm a lifelong appreciator.
All right.
And Neil had a painting of, he is my neighbor. I knew who he was, but I'd never met him. But I saw he had a buffalo painting in his window facing my kitchen window. So as I was doing dishes, I would look at this buffalo painting for many months.
Huh.
That's how he won me with that buffalo painting. Because I'm passionate about buffalo.
Does that hang here?
No,
It's here
it's
somewhere.
here somewhere.
Yeah.
Somewhere in the,
Yeah.
Yes, I should say the bedrooms upstairs are stacked full of your artwork leaning against the wall, just crying to be seen and purchased.
Yeah, right.
Purchased, that's the... yeah, absolutely. And so at what point did you decide to retire from life in Regina, and how did you happen upon Rockglen?
You loved Rockglen first time you saw it, and I was here in the 70s, probably mid 70s, and I thought this is an amazing place. I didn't know anybody here, but just the locale of it and the flora and fauna around here. So
Yeah.
I thought, well, I'd like to live here someday, and here we are.
I couldn't believe, this is a really well-kept secret down here.
No kidding.
It
won't be much longer.
It
now
won't
that
be
these
much
get out.
longer,
No,
but
no.
it's so absolutely beautiful. And I had no idea this existed till Neil brought me here.
Right.
And we call it paradise. It's so beautiful.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you've been here 2 years.
And the people here are super open to the arts. And our friends who run the cafe really have joined us to help promote that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now you've essentially created a touring house here in this space. There are a lot of young bands that are working their way through Saskatchewan. How do they find you?
I guess once we started, it just kind of the momentum of it. Everybody would talk to each other. I'm sure, like every musician does.
Right.
They want to know where to play, where to stay, where to get a good meal. So the word goes out when something's good and bad too. So
right. And so who's come through here already? You've only been here 2 years. How many bands roughly have you had come through?
we've had
8, is that?
8 or some repeats, couple of repeats.
Yeah.
But
And can you house a band and audience in here? You must really pack them in like
we can get
sardines.
40 people in here.
Wow. And this had not been done up until you guys came here.
No.
Well, you obviously care enough that you're willing to open your home literally to turn it into a concert hall. I mean, it's really important that these young bands have performance spaces.
Well, I can relate. When I was young, I was in a band. We had a couple of bands actually.
Yeah.
So, and you could hardly play anywhere.
Right.
You know, when you're 16 or 17, you can't even play in the bars.
Right.
So now when I realize that if this stuff had been around then, you could have toured all over Canada just playing houses.
Yeah, right. How did the jam session that you so marvelous to have happen last night, the house party with everybody all your friends and locals coming over, how did that come together originally?
Hey, it's Kevin. I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. Just a quick reminder that the SaskScapes podcast is available for free on your favorite podcast app, or you can stream it from your browser. Check out the show notes for the link. On the SaskScapes homepage, you'll notice something new under the logo called SaskScapes Plus. You can't miss it. There's a big button saying support with a heart icon next to it. I'd love it if you could click on that button and help keep this podcast series going. When SaskScapes launched in May 2014, it was the first podcast in the province celebrating arts, culture, and heritage. In fact, you'd have been pretty hard-pressed to find any Saskatchewan podcasts. So I'd like to think that we paved the way. It's been because of your support that this podcast is now in its 9th year. Okay, that's it. Enjoy the rest of the episode.
We just decided to try one and see who'd show up and how they liked it, and everybody seems to always want to come back and do it.
So you were meeting, I mean, these weren't people that you knew.
No, we knew some of them, but we didn't know what kind of musicians some of them were.
Right.
They'd come out of the woodwork, some of them.
Right. And so how often does that happen?
We've only had it twice this year since we've been here, but I think we're going to make it more of maybe a bi-monthly event or something.
And more people come. Gabby was here last night. That was the first time.
It's nice to see a young person here.
Yeah.
And we were thrilled.
She's fantastic.
Yeah, and it's great because from first look, it looks like you guys all get together on a regular basis because you're really in tune with learning from each other and picking up stuff from each other. It's really, the free flow is really productive. It works. It works. It must feel very gratifying creatively.
It is. And you enjoy it too?
Yes. So being Ken Christopher. So Ken, how did you're originally from?
Pambrin, which is north of Pontex, west of Gravelbourg.
Right.
And I left and went to Calgary and had a career in painting for 40 years. And then I came back here about 15, 16 years ago.
Right.
And I love the prairie. I spent my summers in a physical area similar to this with high hills and cowboy country.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up with that. And so I was always fascinated by the grasslands. And I had a girlfriend in Regina for a while. And on a return back home from there, I decided to come around south and go back to Swift Current, where I live now. And I came into Rockglen, and it just was instantly, I could live here. Exactly the same response. It was unbelievable.
Mm-hmm. No, I can understand.
And, I thought about it all the way home and took pictures of the hills and made paintings from them. And then I met Jan and Neil at a Southwest Quest thing in East End. Because of my painting show in Calgary got flooded out by the flood. So that was an unbelievably traumatic experience. I had people coming from Edmonton and people coming from Saskatchewan. I hadn't had a show for a long time, and I was looking so forward to it. And the day the show was to go on the wall, the flood hit. And so I was just like stunned. And I came home, and because that was canceled, I could take part in this Southwest Quest that I had been invited to, which I didn't think I could do. And so it was kind of an intuition, like the big city is kicking you out and the country is welcoming you. And that's what it felt like.
Right. Was your work destroyed in that flood?
No, it wasn't.
Right.
No. But I got down to East End and met these beautiful people and more, everybody that was there. And it was like Brenda. And it was like, I've found my family, and so it's just been getting better and better since. And then because of our connection, Neil, he invited me to was that the first jam that you had? And because of Neil and Jan and my memory of Rockglen, those things came together, and it was a blizzard. And I lived 2.5 hours away, but I came anyway. I just could not stay away.
Mother Nature has fun around Rockglen.
Oh.
Last night we had a power outage for most
Yeah,
of the night
exactly.
with all the electronic equipment.
See, the reason for that is there's good things happening here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the negative stuff always is sunk toward it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
got to be neutralized.
Yeah, absolutely. But nobody cares because everybody's just blissed.
You
out
just
at the
do it
fact
anyway.
that somehow it's all magically happened. And
Absolutely
people
magic.
that have been like-minded have gravitated toward here, and
It's
like it was.
there really is some magic down in this
Yeah.
going on here. There's no doubt about it.
But you live in Swift Current now.
Yeah, south of Swift Current.
Right. Okay. And so, are you still painting there?
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And is your work able to be seen, or are you?
I've got a show up in Shaunavon right now where Neil had a show
Right.
before me. And because I had a show in my gallery last fall, word has gotten out because I've been a recluse.
Yeah.
I just have always tried to get away from everything.
Is that so with painters in general?
I don't know. It certainly wasn't me. It
Right.
might be.
Right. What inspire? What is? I don't have the opportunity to see any of your work here, but what do you paint? What images are you drawn to?
I paint landscape,
Uh-huh.
and quite a lot like Neil's.
Right.
Only mine are more tending to abstract because I did paint abstractly for a while.
Right. But again, that through line of painting what your environment, the environment that affected you growing up.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The space, the space is a spiritual presence.
Right. Right.
You know, and when you create that, that's what you're addicted to. I think is creating that, controlling that
Right.
space. You know,
Right.
you make a space you can get into
But it's what you know as well because of having grown up.
inside and outside.
Yeah, yeah.
You
I mean,
recognize-
writers, they always say, write what you know, and painters, you seem to
Exactly.
be painting what you know.
Yeah, so it's a combination of both.
Right, right. And do you also find it a struggle now in 2014 to be making a living full-time?
Well, it has been my entire life.
Right.
You know, and it's one more thing of my denial is I just I have to not worry about it.
Yeah.
You just shut it out
Yeah.
and pretend it doesn't happen. And when you don't have anything, you don't have anything, and you don't whine about it. You just carry on. You know,
Right.
because I wouldn't trade what I've got for anything.
Well, that's the thing. There
Yeah.
isn't a practical part of this creativity that says, well, this just makes no sense, therefore I'll stop. You don't paint because it makes sense.
Definitely not.
Very well said, Kevin.
We often hear of people who transition out of a job that's been terminated in a profession that's well respected, and now you go online, you can read what to do with the second half of your life, and everybody says, now it's time to find your passion, do something you love. But for artists, that's how you started out.
Yeah, exactly.
It seems completely foreign to do anything else
Yeah,
but.
absolutely.
Right. And so what happened? Your hope is that this just continues to explode. That this venue becomes so popular that the walls can't hold all the performers that want to come through.
That would be great. And we'd like this to become more of an art community here and an art center where people come to.
Right.
Because if you go in the States, all these little towns that have become art centers where people gravitate to.
Yeah.
And I don't know why it can't happen here.
And
too.
these are the stories that people in Saskatchewan don't know about. These are little pockets of the province that
Yeah.
people don't know about. And that was the impetus behind me creating this series, was that Saskatoon, Regina, big centers have
Yeah.
such huge voices. And then there are these little pockets. And on one hand, it's bittersweet because you don't want to start putting a spotlight to the point where it loses its specialness.
Yeah.
Like, it's still, there's something very spectacular happening here, and you want people to know about it.
Yeah.
So what building is sitting empty that screams, buy me and turn me into a gallery/concert hall? There must be
I think
one.
The
The
theater.
church.
Yeah. The church and the theater.
The
would be-
Dreamland Theater?
Yeah.
Right.
The Dreamland Theater, the folks there it's for sale, but they've been generous enough when we get a big band in, like the Harpoonist and the Axe Murder from Vancouver, they donate the theater. And it has excellent acoustics, and it's a beautiful place to watch a band. But the night they came, it was the worst blizzard of the year.
All right.
There it is.
Yeah.
Well, it may be time to have a summer series only. Some people do have to work around the elements. But there's something magical that can happen when people forge 2 hours in a snowstorm.
It was amazing.
They want to be there.
It was amazing. Yeah.
And you've also opened up your rooms to have people stay if they need to be. I mean, you've hosted me, which I didn't even hesitate when you said that. I thought that's partially because of my upbringing, but I thought somehow I have a feeling that's part of the experience of being here. I was saying to you last night, every cell in your wall oozes creativity. You've created a very special place. It's not just a house. It's a center.
Thank you. That's about the most beautiful compliment we could get.
But your background, Jan, isn't in the arts. You were in social work.
That's right.
In mental health and addiction.
Yeah.
Right. Do you?
I'm her biggest project.
Thank God for artists.
I haven't been out of work. I haven't been bored a minute.
Right. But it is true. There's a very powerful healing process that can happen through creativity with the demographic that you've been working with, I would expect.
I was lucky in the mental health clinic I worked, it was adolescents I worked with. We had a couple of very talented musicians who we could line up with some of our clients. And quite frankly, the magic they had with those young people who were open to that kind of creativity, it was far and beyond anything I could do in my office. So I'm a lifelong appreciator of the arts, so I'm not artistic in that way at all. I don't know, I just have such respect, and having people come here, we're always uplifted. Like for a week afterwards, there's kind of a high from having music in our home and art. And the local artists here have just been so open to everything you've done, haven't they, Neil? Yeah. And our friends at Russ and Schnitt Belbeck at the cafe, they got on board, and they feed the bands. We house them. Other people sell tickets for us. Angie at the library sells tickets. Right. Ernie at the co-op sells tickets. Our friends come from great distances to support us. So it's a very lovely, lovely process. But I don't know what I'm doing. We don't know.
That's
what
okay. My experience is ignorance truly is bliss when it comes to the arts. Sometimes master plans can be so limiting that you never allow yourself to go where you would otherwise. So just let it happen organically. I have a feeling when the universe conspires to put people together of like minds like this, that it's not an accident, and that the direction it heads in.
No kidding. That's exactly what's going on.
Yeah, and so it will go exactly where it needs to go.
Yeah,
I mean, there's nothing you can do to really wreck it at this point except to try to have a plan.
Yeah.
Because if you look back, you could never have planned what's happened
Absolutely
up till now,
not.
right?
And so just keep open and let the pieces fall as they may.
Right. Yeah, which requires a tremendous amount of faith, but I think that's what's very interesting about artists, no matter what the genre is, that you just do give yourself over to this trust.
The process.
You have to, because you've never really had anything solid and secure.
Well, that's where the energy is.
Yeah,
you
right.
Follow that thread.
Right. Although, if somebody came in and said, "I'd like to buy your collection for a couple of $1 million,"
there's energy there.
Yeah. Right.
Eyes light up. Yeah. I saw the eyes light up.
Artists can be bought. It's not about, "Oh, really? I couldn't. Please take it." You're spiritual and giving, but to a point.
Yeah, right.
But you're also an inspiration for small towns. That I always have questions to artists about what would you tell somebody in a small town where there's nothing going on. How do you start? But that's essentially what you guys did. I mean, you started, even if it's creating something on your own and getting people to come in. the universe will conspire to meet you there and start drawing people to.
And people are curious about art, that they've had no exposure to it all, but there's something about it that draws people to it. And the people here are particularly open.
Yeah.
I just feel like they're family, know. So I don't know how to explain that.
Are you drawn to art that's not as, I've asked this of other folks that I've talked to, art that is very abstract, that isn't, that for an uneducated eye to look at a canvas and say, yes, that is the aged, wrinkled, weathered face of someone who probably has an amazing history behind them, versus a piece of abstract three-dimensional metal sitting mounted on a piece of concrete somewhere. You look at that and say, that's not art. Or are you able to see beauty in something that isn't as clearly defined?
There's history in that abstract too.
Right.
We all come from abstract. Before material form develops, we're all abstract. Right. There's a structure that we fall into, like Plato's ideals. They're ideas first, and that's where abstract art comes from. They're the ideas.
Yeah.
Picasso painted the seventh dimension of geometry. People thought he was breaking up the faces into facets. He wasn't. Yeah. It was the facets that were creating the faces, and he was painting those.
Yeah.
I've never heard anybody say that, and I'm not sure I'm right, but I suspect I am.
I don't know if there's a right or a wrong. It's the way you experience it. But I think that Picasso was an incredibly controversial artist.
He was also an incredibly brilliant.
But I mean,
and inspired so many people.
There's a controversy going on nowadays about, and right across Canada, should we be funding public art? So much of it is people saying, this isn't art, this is crap. This isn't art. Art is a picture of a pastoral field. That's what I understand. This isn't art. Yeah. But do you feel that that's a really slippery slope to go down?
Oh, it's extremely slippery, because you're people that are having no experience and education making decisions about energy.
Right.
High energy that's coming in. And so you're slowing the process of evolution by not recognizing quality at that level.
Right. So it all has merit.
Pardon?
It all has merit.
Well, it's not all, just the good stuff.
Good one, Ken.
Right. Which is in essence to say all, because it will always be good to somebody.
Well, I mean, there is
a
consensus of quality.
There is.
Absolutely.
But is that not purely subjective, depending on the person viewing it?
Truth is pretty subjective in the end. Yeah. You recognize it or you don't.
Right.
It's your body that recognizes what's real.
Right.
This is a pretty heavy conversation.
Yeah, all of the podcasts seem to ultimately wind up there. I know, and I'm fully responsible for it. But that's sort of the way my brain works.
It's so fun,
right? It is so fun, and it's interesting. And I also should say that I'm sitting here also with Brenda Feuerstein, who I met with last night, and whose name will give me tremendous anxiety for many days to come.
Yeah.
The Brenda Feuerstein is here from East End. Exactly. How did you find your way to Rockglen?
I was hiking in the East Block, and a mutual friend of Jan and Neil's just brought me here to meet them, and said, you'd probably be interested in the art and that Neil was producing. And I walked in and literally fell in love with Jan and Neil, and fell in love with the hills and the energy of this land compared to East End, which is a significantly different kind of energy.
Yeah. And I get that. The same thing happened when I walked in. I dare say I would not be out of line to say that you would welcome anybody to come and drop in, and they would instantly get it.
I hope so, because that's our goal. That's our goal, to make people welcome and share the love of Neil's painting and music.
No, you get that the minute you open the door, so I'm not so surprised that you felt that, Brenda.
That's a huge compliment.
Yeah. I mean, you do. And many people say they like to do, but they control the environment so much that you will feel welcome under our conditions. Yeah. But you're very unconditional here. It's a very organic space, a very free-flowing space. and a very welcoming space. So I hope that somebody listening to this winds up thinking, okay, that's it. I know where we're going this weekend. And shows up at your door and says, I heard the podcast and I had to come down.
That would be lovely. They'd be most welcome. Might get a cookie out of it. You never know.
Well, we've just had a pretty darn fine omelet, handmade by Neil. So there's lots of home cooking with a great deal of love going into it as well. And 2 very well looked after and adored dogs. So, and if for no other reason than to just sit here and take in this geography around here.
Yeah.
It is
It's
really,
amazing.
it is amazing. You know, I mean, some people drive into a place and go, wow, it was really cool. But this is something, there's an energy around here that is really spectacular. So I'm not surprised you gravitated here. And here's hoping that you've shone a big spotlight on the importance of Rockglen, but not so big that it becomes overwhelming. You know, you don't want to lose the specialness of it.
You don't want to drive the prices up so we can't buy a house here.
That's right.
You let us buy property here first.
Yeah.
That's right.
I was already thinking
Yes.
that.
Note to listeners, hold off for 5 years until all the property is bought. And thank you.
Kevin, thank you.
So don't release that till we get our place.
Right. That's right. Okay. Well, thank you so much. And thank you for inviting me to be a part of it. I could have easily just stopped in for a couple of hours, but I would have denied myself the full experience by staying here and experiencing it all. It's been a really special time. Thanks so much.
Thank
you for
you.
coming.
Thank you
Thanks
for
so much,
coming,
Kevin.
indeed.
It's just been so much fun.
Thanks for listening. The SaskScapes podcast is created by Kevin Power as part of the Culture Days Animateur program operated by Sask Culture. Funding to the cultural sector is provided through the Saskatchewan Lotteries Trust Fund for Sports, Culture and Recreation. If you want to hear more of these podcasts, or to see the great work being done by other Sask Culture animateurs, please visit www.iheartculture.ca. Special thanks to Paved Arts in Saskatoon for their technical support. Music for SaskScapes is provided by Saskatchewan-born singer-songwriter Jeffrey Straker. There is no end to the stories to be told. So, until next time,